Hi, I'm Chuck Gifford, and I'll be reading you selections from this week's May the 8th Nantucket Inquirer Mirror. Our first story today comes from the top of the front page and is headlined, Voters Shoot Down Town-Run Nursing Home. $125 million cost, too steep a hill to climb, by Dean Geddes. In what may have been the most significant vote of this year's town meeting, voters rejected a $125 million override to build a new skilled nursing facility to replace the current Our Island home. The article received 450 votes in favor and 283 against, falling 38 votes short of the two-thirds majority required to pass. The town likely marks the beginning of the end for town-run nursing care on the island. Select Board member Dawn Holgate, who has spent nearly a decade on the Our Island Home Steering and Building Committee, acknowledged that only a sliver of hope remains. Members of the Select Board, having long said that building a new facility is the only viable option, as the current nursing home at East Creek Road, built in 1981, is outdated, deteriorating, and no longer up to code. It's difficult because it did not feel like a resounding no at town meeting, Holgate said. If there's a strong show of support at the ballot, we as a board could discuss trying to bring it back at a special town meeting, but that would depend on a lot of subcontractor bids holding out a little longer. Right now, the bids expire about a week after the ballot vote. We could also rebid it, but I fear the price would go up, not down. Although the article failed to secure the necessary support at town meeting, it remains on the ballot for the annual town election, May the 20th. Had it passed town meeting, it still would have required a simple majority at the ballot box to proceed. The majority of those who spoke at town meeting were in favor of the article, offering personal stories about the care received by family and friends at Our Island home. A handful of voters stood up to oppose the project, acknowledging the importance of a nursing home but questioning whether such a high price could be justified. These are terrible alternatives that we face, Charity Benz said. Nobody can argue this is a bargain. But look around the room. I see a lot of gray hair and shiny heads, said John Copenhagen, the president of the Nantucket Center for Elder Affairs. We are all one blood clot, one trip and fall away from being a new resident of Our Island home. We don't have the luxury of assessing the neighboring facilities. Finance Committee Chair Denise Conrue, speaking as a private citizen, noted that the town faced as much as $435 million in proposed overrides in the coming years for other major projects, including a new middle school and coastal resilience work at Steamboat Wharf. Andrew Tapley, who said he works for a commercial real estate company that finances and sells skilled nursing facilities, voiced concern about the project's cost. I'm in favor of a new facility, but what I can't support are these numbers. These numbers are so astronomical and not market, he said. I've spoken with clients who built skilled nursing facilities in Illinois at $400,000 a bed. We're talking about $3 million a bed. That's just insane. John Lemieux of Vertex Companies, the town's project manager for the proposed construction, said comparisons to private sector nursing homes are misleading. This project was competitively bid. We had 119 subcontractor bids across 33 categories of work, Lemieux said. There are two big differences when you talk about comparables off-island. The island cost premium is 40 to 50%, and this project has to be done at prevailing wage. Those private facilities don't have to pay their electricians and plumbers over $100 an hour. That's required by the state. Grant Sanders, a volunteer at Our Island home, who often plays guitar for residents, became emotional as he addressed the meeting. The people there are trying to live out the ends of their lives in dignity, he said, holding back tears. $3 million per bed seems like a small price to pay. Kathy Baird, representing the town's advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers, said it supports the need to care for the island's aging population, but ultimately agreed with the Capital Program Committee and Finance Committee that the project was not financially prudent. If there are cuts to Medicaid or Medicare, that would affect revenue at our island home and cost even more for Nantucket taxpayers, she said. The Finance Committee voted 6-3 in February to recommend that town meeting voters approve the article when the cost was projected to be $104 million. But after it was announced in April that the projected cost had risen by $22 million, the committee revisited the vote in reverse course with a 5-4 vote not to recommend. Holgate pushed back on the notion that the cost had risen by $22 million because she said the original number had just been an estimate, while the final number was the actual concrete bid. That's why we don't ever want to give out numbers until they are final, she said. This was the first time we actually brought people real numbers, with the contingency that we probably won't end up spending all of it. Still on the front page, our next article is headlined, Voters Reject All STR Proposals, Leaving Fate to Land Court by Dean Geddes. May 8th. After years of heated debate and multiple failed attempts at regulation, Nantucket voters once again rejected every short-term rental proposal brought to town meeting Monday, leaving the island's most divisive issue in the hands of a land court judge who could soon set the precedent from Boston. Voters turned down all 4 STR articles, including one that would have allowed STRs island-wide with few restrictions, 2 that imposed owner occupancy and length of stay limits, and a 4th that sought to cap the number of STRs at 1,350 and restrict them to 70 rental days per year for the next 3 years. With no STR zoning regulations passed and none currently on the books, the issue now falls to Land Court Judge Michael Vey. He is deliberating the appeal of Kathy Ward, who is suing the town over its decision to allow her neighbors to short-term rent their home more frequently than they live in it. I've lost track of how many times we've been to town meeting to solve this problem, Town Council John Gregorio said before the votes. It's imperative that you solve this problem locally. If you don't, you're leaving it in the hands of a judge in Boston. I think that comes with substantial risk. But with voters again unable to reach consensus, Select Board Chair Brooke Moore said that the issue will remain at a standstill until, quote, the pain of not doing something exceeds the unwillingness of people to compromise to get there, end quote. That dynamic could shift dramatically once the Land Court issues its ruling, expected in the near future. A decision that significantly alters the STR landscape could spur new action, either at a fall special town meeting or the 2026 annual town meeting. My guess is that this was the last opportunity for town meeting to get ahead of a court ruling, but town meeting always has the opportunity to amend our general and zoning bylaws, Moore said. Voters came closest to a regulation with Article 66, which received a majority vote of 468 to 321, but fell short of the 2/3 threshold required to approve a zoning bylaw. Sponsored by Caroline Baltzer, the article would have explicitly allowed STRs island-wide as a primary use to be regulated under existing and future bylaws. I think the short-term rental topic is the 21st century white whale for Nantucket, Baltzer said. It's been hard on the community, and I hope that I've written an article that can settle it in a way that everyone can be happy with. Nantucket Land and Water Council Executive Director Emily Malden opposed the article, citing concerns about the continued conversion of year-round homes into STRs. It incentivizes more intense redevelopment that has effects on our drinking water, stormwater, and sewer, she said. Former town assessor Debbie Dilworth spoke in favor of Bolzer's article, noting that the positive financial impact of STRs. The STR rental excise tax is an important part of our budget, and every dollar it raises is a dollar not going on your tax levy, she said. While Article 66 narrowly missed passage, more restrictive proposals than Article 67, 68, and 69 were soundly defeated. Article 67, a zoning bylaw proposed by Fritz McClure, would have allowed STRs only if the property owner occupied the home more days than it was rented. It also required owners to occupy the property for at least 30 days per year, set a 7-day minimum stay in July and August, and a 3-day minimum for the rest of the year. The article failed 492 to 243. Supporters said that it protected the tradition of islanders renting their homes to make ends meet while discouraging commercial operators. Opponents argued it unfairly targeted seasonal residents and could hurt the island's tourism economy. I'm an example of a business owner who relies on short-term rentals, Jim Mondani said. Name me a business that doesn't rely on people coming out here. By cutting the rentals by even 1 week, I have a boat rental business. If you take away 2 weeks, that sinks my business pretty much because it's based on a 10-week season. Article 68, a general bylaw sponsored by Patsy Wright, mirrored many of the restrictions in McClure's proposal. It failed by an even wider margin, 477 to 181. Before the vote, Gregorio said that it was legally flawed as it attempted to regulate zoning through a general bylaw. Article 69, sponsored by Matthew Peel and the political action group Put Neighborhoods First, proposed a 3-year cap of 1,350 STRs, a 7-day annual rental limit per property, and a maximum of 2 STRs per owner. It was overwhelmingly rejected, 490 to 82. Peel said that the proposal aimed to preserve the character of the island. Something's changed, he said. This article is an attempt to hold on to what makes Nantucket special. Ray DaCosta, speaking during public comments, strongly opposed the measure. STRs are the driver of the economy, he said. You're taking a lever from my generation to help buy a home. This has got to end. Our next story, the last from the front page today, is headlined Conservation Foundation to Build Research and Education Hub by Kay Quigley, May 5th. The Nantucket Conservation Foundation announced plans Monday to build the Milestone Center, a new educational and scientific research center within its Cranberry Bog property off Milestone Road. Creating dozens of affordable housing units for employees, a stone's throw from the center over the next several years, is also part of the Foundation's plan. The center will serve as a, quote, a hub for research, environmental education, and community engagement, supporting our broadened scope of conservation work, end quote, said Cormac Collier, president and CEO of the 62-year-old conservation organization. Having this facility and having the infrastructure available to us will actually broaden our work and widen that work and allow us to work with more individuals and more off-island institutions as well, and that bring their specialties and expertise on the island to utilize our lands and kind of advance our knowledge, Collier told the Inquirer Mirror this week. The proposed 10,000 square foot facility will feature new laboratory space and educational facilities for Foundation staff, visiting research fellows, and island partners, he said. We're going to have both wet and dry lab for collection storage for processing specimens. We're also doing any other research as it relates to a project on our property itself, whether it's water quality related, sediment related, carbon storage related, Collier said. There's somewhat endless possibilities and opportunities for future scientific investigation. The Foundation hopes to secure permitting for both the center and a first phase of housing in the next 6 months, Collier said. It will start by going to the Historic District Commission and is working with town staff to determine what other boards it needs approvals from. Once approved, Collier estimates construction of the facility would take about 18 months. The foundation has engaged SMP Architects and Verdinian Landscape Studio for the project. The first housing units will likely go up faster than that because Collier expects that they'll make it through the regulatory process quicker. The section of the bog property set aside for the housing will be developed in phases over the next decade. The foundation has a 10-year financial and operational plan for housing build-out and is looking to build housing in various styles with upwards up to 65 bedrooms across the island in that time. About 2/3 of that will likely be built on the bog property eventually, Collier said, though the plans are still in flux. We're going to be very careful in terms of our phase-out, but I would say that we would definitely have at least 40-plus bedrooms in the Milestone area, Collier said. The housing would sit between 100 and 200 yards from the facility, he said. It's close enough that individuals that are there can interact with the center itself, but we wanted some sort of separation from the actual work building as well, for the quality of life of the residents that are there, Collier said. The housing will be offered at affordable rates to the employees, he said, and the foundation will look to take care of any current employees before offering it up to new recruits. We're going to prioritize existing staff that need safe and secure year-round housing, and then the opportunities will certainly be available to attract new talent or to replace existing talent if people choose to move off-island, Collier said. And then we will also have housing available for visiting scientists and researchers. The center and housing will be fully donor-funded through a $40 million campaign, Collier said. To date, about 60% of that has been raised, he said. We will be reaching out to the rest of the community and our loyal supporters over the coming year to raise the rest, Collier said. We're very excited with the momentum and progress we have, and we hope that the project will resonate with the rest of the community as we reach out to them. Stakeholder engagement sessions are scheduled to take place over the coming months. The Research and Education Building is carefully designed to optimize functional space by incorporating below-grade and external programming features, according to a Foundation press release. Additionally, the building will feature environmentally conscious LEED certification, solar energy, an innovative wastewater treatment system, and native landscaping, all contributing to its sustainability and environmental responsibility. Since 1963, the Foundation has been at the forefront of stewarding and protecting Nantucket's ecosystems to be a resource for all Nantucket residents and visitors, Collier said. NCF is proud to invest in facilities that will significantly benefit the community. The Milestone Center is a natural evolution of our work, providing stable and secure housing options for our employees, creating space to enhance our research capabilities and educational outreach, and remaining steadfast in our mission of land stewardship. As stewards of over 9,000 acres of land, 17 miles of coastal shoreline, and 100 miles of trails, NCF is committed to ensuring that any infrastructure aligns with the organization's conservation values. The Milestone Center is thoughtfully designed to harmonize with its surroundings while minimizing environmental and visual impact. Founded in 1963, the Nantucket Conservation Foundation conserves Nantucket's rare and significant natural resources and engages in impactful ecological research to inform resource management and further its knowledge of Nantucket's unique ecosystems and species. Our next story, headlined "Voters Oppose Shift to Town Council, Ballot Question Could Still Come," by Dean Geddes. May 8th. The Town Council Study Committee, which has spent the past 2 years drafting a potential article to enable a transition to a town council form of government, replacing Nantucket's open town meeting, received some early feedback from voters over the weekend. At the start of Saturday's annual town meeting, a non-binding, quote, sense of the meeting, end quote, question asked attendees whether they supported the shift to a town council structure, and the result was 251 in favor, 477 opposed. Select Board Chair Brooke Moore said that the board will likely wait to see the results of the same non-binding question on the May 20th town election ballot before determining any next steps. While the majority of town meeting voters opposed the idea, she said, it will be important to gauge the broader segment of the community as well. I think the decision point for the Select Board is whether we perceive enough support to spend town resources to move the process forward, and not more said. That's what we will decide after these two votes. Curtis Barnes, who sponsored the 2023 article that created the Town Council Study Committee and serves as one of its 10 members, said he was not surprised by the town meeting vote. I'm not surprised that 700 or 800 people who always go to town meeting, the 8% of our registered voters, would want to keep it because it's their thing, Barnes said. He added that he expects the ballot vote, which is likely to draw 2,000 to 3,000 responses, will show stronger support for moving to a town council model. Several voters who spoke against the change during town meetings cited concerns about losing the ability to participate directly in decision-making. The percentage of people who show up at any town meeting may be low, but when something important comes up for you, you have the ability to be there and speak, George Butterworth said. I think it would be an incredible setback to move to a new form of government. Barnes said that feedback gathered during the public comment will help the committee improve outreach and address concerns, particularly the perception that voters would lose their voice in a council format. At town council meetings, public comment is the first item on the agenda, he said. You can make your voice heard, and you don't have to wait a year to do it. With a meeting every 2 weeks, it would be much more open, much more receptive, and much more responsive, as I see it. Fellow committee member Bo Barber made the case for a town council structure, arguing that the current system has created an imbalance between the legislative branch, the voters, and the executive branch, the town administration. Do we, the legislature, have the tools to engage as equals? The answer is no, he said. Meanwhile, the executive here on Nantucket is a small but well-resourced group with both administrative and, in the current system, quasi-legislative authority. It drafts articles, it controls appointments, it exercises broad discretion in how our laws are implemented, and it has the legal and financial capacity to shape legislation before it even reaches this room. Barber cited that the town's failure to implement the state's paid family medical leave law, approved at the 2024 town meeting, was an example of the current system's shortcomings. He also pointed to what he described as an effort by the Select Board to alter the spirit of the legislation that formed the Town Council Study Committee by suggesting it studied other forms of government or have its funding withheld. What we are proposing would strengthen the legislature so that it can serve as the necessary counterbalance to executive power, Barber said. It needs to be a source of friction that leads to accountability. And our final story today is headlined, Voters Reject Funding for DPW Design, Employee Housing, by Dean Geddes. May 8th. The failure of two key municipal spending articles at town meeting, $14 million for town employee housing and $1.2 million for the design of a new public works facility, represents a major setback in the town's efforts to move forward on key planning efforts. While town officials stress the importance of these projects, voters remain skeptical on the cost and the need. Both Article 11 and Article 12 received significant voter support but fell short of the two-thirds majority required for passage, much like the $125 million proposal for a new Our Island Home nursing home. Although a majority supported the Wyatt Drive housing article, 432 in favor to 317 against, it did not meet the 499 votes needed for approval. The town was hoping to build 9 housing units on 3 Wyatt Drive lots, Housing Director Katie Ferrantella said, though she acknowledged the $14 million would likely have only funded construction on 2 of the lots at most. Select Board Chair Brooke Moore said that building homes remains the most stable long-term solution for the town's housing crisis. While the town currently rents a number of properties for employees, those arrangements are subject to change. Despite the article's failure, she said that she still expects the Wyatt Drive property to be used for housing in some form. We can get pretty creative, she said. We're always looking for ways to meet the need in different ways, but fundamentally, unfortunately, a lot of times it just takes money. Voters also narrowly rejected the DPW design article 370 to 368. Former Select Board member Bob DaCosta questioned the scale of the proposed building, which includes 15,000 square feet of administrative space, an 11,000 square foot garage, and 29,000 square feet of interior vehicle storage. Moore expressed frustration with what she described as a catch-22. The town must invest in design work to generate accurate construction bids, but voters often view that early spending as excessive. We tried to get design funding for town employee housing last year, and this year we tried to finish out the design of the DPW facility so that we could come to town meeting with an actual contract number. But we have to invest up front to do that, she said. Had the design article passed, the Select Board had planned to hold a special town meeting this fall to seek funding for the full construction cost of the new DPW facility, either on Shadbush Road behind Nantucket Memorial Airport or its current site near the Nantucket landfill. Now that path is unclear. The construction won't be on the ballot because we can't finish the design, Moore said. We'll have to figure out where we go from here. She added that the delays typically come with rising costs. Sometimes you scale it back and it still costs more, she said. The building out at the playing fields was an example of that. We kicked that can down the road for years. Voters did, however, approve millions of dollars in other capital expending, including $5.5 million for improvements, maintenance, and upkeep of town buildings and facilities, $5.1 million for the creation of, quote, living shoreline, end quote, along Sacagawea Pond for coastal resilience purposes, $3.2 million in road and sidewalk improvements, $2 million in dredging work, $2 million for Goldfinch Drive property intended for town employee housing, and $1.9 million for improvements to Pleasant Street and Williams Lane. They also approved $6.9 million for Tom Nevers Road bike path, which must still be approved at the May 20th town meeting, at the May 20th town election, and the $140.6 million annual town operating budget. That's all I have time for. This is your reader, Chuck Gifford, saying goodbye, and thanks for listening.